welcome everyone to the January 9th, 2023 Grafton Board of Health meeting. As a preliminary matter, this is Karen Wisdowski-Gobin, Chair of the Board of Health. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Austin Magnet.
Austin Magnet present.
And Bill Muller.
Bill Muller here.
All right, and we'll see if Dan's able to join. I haven't heard anything from him, so I'm guessing he's probably, I know it wanted me to do some like crazy Adobe update thing again or something. I'm like, stop with the updates before the last minute before the meetings. Staff and anticipated speakers on the agenda. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. I mentioned it looks like Nancy is sick and she won't be joining us. So then Micah Blondo.
Present.
All right. Looks like Dan is in the process of joining us. So, all right. I would like to open the meeting. Can I get a motion to open the meeting?
This is Austin Magnet. I will make that motion to open the meeting.
Is there a second?
This is Bill Muller. I'll second that motion.
All right. And then roll call vote amongst the members.
Austin Magnet, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Dan's connected yet or not fully. No, he's not on volume. He's not on sound yet. And then Karen Wisdowski-Gobin, aye. We have a quorum, so that's what matters. Good evening again. This open meeting of the Grafton Board of Health is being conducted remotely. There we go. Consistent with the act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency in the Commonwealth. This act includes an extension currently until March 31st, 2023 of the remote meeting provisions of Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, the act extends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted to the town's website at www.grafton-mass.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. There are no public hearings scheduled for this evening's meeting. And then I'm just going to cover a few basic ground rules that probably everyone could repeat on my behalf at this point after all these meetings that we've had. For this meeting, the Grafton Board of Health is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note the meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that you take care not to screen share your computer because, as we all know, anything that you have on your screen in our broadcasting could be captured by said recording. Any supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce any speakers for any topics on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will ask if any of the board members have any questions, comments, or any type of motions. As always, please identify yourself when speaking because we're remote. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking to avoid background noise. And then please remember to speak clearly and in a way to help generate accurate meeting minutes. For any responses, please wait until I yield the floor to you. And then once again, state your name before speaking. And then finally, any votes on any motions made during this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right. So with that, let's turn to the first item on the agenda, which is the Alliance updates. And hi, Dan, by the way.
Right, Dan here.
All right. I don't have any real particularly big updates. As far as outstanding renewals, I think Stephanie's daily grind just we need to get her to come in and pay her fees. And then we haven't heard anything from the Spectrum Health people, so I plan on paying a visit with them tomorrow just to make sure see where the ball got dropped on that. We have one foodborne illness complaint I'll be looking into tomorrow because the restaurant was closed today. And we've also just opened up a new tattoo body art establishment. So they're up and running. And that's all I really have for updates. And if anyone has any questions, feel free.
I know we had a tattoo body art, and then it moved to Millbury. I hadn't even heard that we were getting another one.
Yes, it's right next to the Santander Bank.
Oh,
Okay.
It's in the building that Santander Bank used to be in.
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
But they just have an ATM there now.
Okay.
So they all used to work.
I need to get out more.
They all used to work for the other establishment here in town, so they were all pretty aware of what to do and had everything squared away. So
Okay, that's good. It's always good when someone comes in, whether it doesn't have to be just tattoo body art, any establishment, food or whatever, when they come in and they pretty much already know the lay of the land, the state requirements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It always makes everyone's life easier.
definitely.
Yeah, I think Nancy, even though, the trooper that she is, even though she was under the weather and it's like, just relax and get better, she sent out for the board members stuff. She sent out an inspection report. It looks like, had I actually had time to review it during the day, I would have seen Heart and Hand body art and wondered what that was. It's me playing catch up right now too. I guess for the board members, are there any questions around the inspection report at all? Dan?
Yes, hi, this is Dan. Thanks, Micah, for all your hard work over the past month. I think you're probably doing double duty.
Thank you.
And for getting tomorrow as quickly as possible to that complaint about possible food poisoning. I had two questions. I rushing to get on. I can't remember the first one, so I may have to come back to that. But generally speaking, what is a geothermal well on 32 Meadowbrook Road?
I believe they're wells. They're used for actually heating purposes. So they drill way down where the earth is warm and then pump water down there to warm it up and then bring it up to the surface. So it's not a drinking well.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's good.
we've had way back in the day, this is me dating myself and how long I've been on the board, way back in the day when these were new fandangled kind of things in town and in the state, we had a couple come through and it was like, what do we do? How do we evaluate? It had all of those like, how do we handle these questions? Now, it's not that it's commonplace, but it's definitely a little bit more widely known, and I think there's a variety of them across the state.
Yeah, this is Bill Muller. I think the technology is similar to the heat pump technology. So you see all the Mitsubishi units being put on houses and so forth. They're exchanging between ambient air and the house. And here, since the temperature, I think below a certain depth is relatively constant, it can be used to heat in the winter and to cool in the summer. It's technology that never really kind of caught on very well. But I do think, of course, I think it's pretty expensive to drill a well that deep. But thanks. Got some education tonight. Thanks. Yeah.
Looks, Amelia, are you there?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry you can't see me. I'm on my laptop, but for some reason the camera was turned off on the work desktop. So that's kind of useless. But anyway, hello, how is everybody doing? Happy New Year.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, Happy New Year. I just went off into my spiel at the beginning and didn't wish everyone a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you for reminding. We're still on the Alliance updates. Do you have any updates for us, Amelia?
In terms of Grafton, we did complete 2 flu clinics and a COVID clinic between November and December in the schools. And as you know, I have a new nurse, regional public health nurse, Molly. She resumed the Grafton Senior Center and Housing Authority blood pressure clinics. So
Okay.
we do each one once a month.
Good. Happy to hear that.
And, you know, we will revisit at some point. I'm still waiting on more staff, but we will revisit doing more hands-only CPR, those types of presentations at the senior center. That was well received last time, so I'd like to keep that going once we have our acts together, and then get an understanding of what else is needed, what other topics would be important to the seniors.
No, we appreciate it. And yeah, agreed, because the senior center be obviously best for providing, what they feel like have people been asking for stuff, certain topics, et cetera, that would be relevant to them, whether it be kind of more timely topics in terms of think back when, COVID first came up or something, or something that's more chronic health condition related, for example, beyond obviously CPR, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and we did have Joseph Early come and do a presentation on overdose
Mhm.
and opioids and the opioid crisis. They actually received that pretty well. So that's a nice topic to revisit from time to time as well. So I think, we would start with like a little survey, find out what people are interested in.
Yeah.
And take it from there. And
Yeah.
hopefully there are topics where we can find the right speakers for.
Yeah. And even the overdosing, like I know I was reading, it seems to become more prevalent, where sometimes, if you think about like how time has gone on and what's the drugs, what are the drugs that people are overdosing on? Well, now you start to hear about, fentanyl has obviously picked up a lot of steam and you're seeing it look like candy and stuff. And now it's xylazine, which is showing up being, and I don't know, I don't have data from up here, but I know I was just reading an article over the weekend about how it's like just blowing through the Philadelphia area, and Narcan and stuff doesn't work against xylazine, which is it's a large animal sedative, not a horse tranquilizer. That's the ketamine that's also being found. But the xylazine might be cattle, but Narcan doesn't work against it. It's not an opioid, it's a sedative. So they'll give someone Narcan and it'll reverse the opioid, the heroin, the fentanyl, whatever it might be, but then they're still in this super sedated state because they unknowingly took something that's got the xylazine or the ketamine in it. And there's no real protocol yet for what do you do with someone that's in that type of situation. And the xylazine, not to get too graphic with it, unlike the ketamine, causes like really scary looking like wounds to erupt on people, like black, like almost like black charred flesh, that's showing up, which is something unique, they were saying, compared to even like the ketamine side of the world. And like, how do you treat that? So now there's crisis with like wound care clinics being needed to help these people out, because now they have these open sores on top of everything.
Yeah, that has the makings of a horror movie, but yes.
So yeah, just as time goes on, like things change, even though they're still overdosing, concerns. It might be now people are overdosing on other stuff, or they think it's something that's a legal drug, but it's actually looks to be like a legal drug that's gotten cut with something else that they don't know it got cut with. And that's where like the fentanyl and stuff is coming into play, unfortunately. Like Bill had his hand up before Dan. Now, Bill, if you still want to.
No, I was just going to point out that it's a veterinary anesthetic, basically. And the wounds they get are very severe wounds that require extensive debridement and can lead to amputations and all kinds of, serious complications. What's not clear to me about the drug trade is they seem to be, trying to kill off their customers. You would think that, certainly with the fentanyl, since it's so much more potent than heroin or other opioids, you would think that they not really go too far into that because their clients are actually going to begin to disappear.
Yeah. Agreed. Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Amelia, for that. I'm glad Joe is still focused on the opioids and overdoses. I think that is something we should try to bring back somehow to the community in terms of concern. It's been pushed on the back burner somewhat, at least locally. And I did remember my question from Micah, but someone else may know as well. Yeah, just getting back for a second to Spectrum. Does anybody know if that's a private corporation or if it's like a quasi-state outfit or where their headquarters is or anything? I'm just wondering. The one,
I think it's a private corporation, Dan.
okay. And the one in Worcester, Micah, if you're not able to get somebody locally, is probably one of the biggest ones. I think it's up, I think of the square up there going towards Great Brook Valley. But they have a methadone clinic up there, but it seems like we're gonna have to get through to somebody at corporate,
And Westboro, they have a place in Westboro. So.
Okay.
I'm not sure who exactly Nancy has reached out to so far, so I will figure that out. And obviously somebody didn't get the message somewhere, so.
Right, okay, thanks.
Yeah, it could be, just thinking like if I don't remember them being on the delayed, now don't quote me, I'm not saying every year. I don't have 100% recollection of every year's list of delinquent delayed, but I can't say it's one that sticks out to me from past years as being on the list of people who are still trailing behind. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened in the past, but I'm just thinking of like working at a corporation and stuff, like all it takes is the person who used to be in that position to have left the company or moved to a different position, and things can easily, unfortunately, get dropped and lost. Not everyone, when they leave the company or change positions, sets some type of, hey, I'm no longer with the company, out of office message that's going to ping, or it gets shut off by the IT team. I'm giving a little bit benefit of the doubt, just not knowing how big they are and what their structure is, but I also know it doesn't take much for something to get dropped either. Yeah. Or past experience knowing like a humongous corporation and there was like 2 people handling all the permitting for thousands and thousands and thousands of stores. And you can just imagine what their life was like come year end when all those permits were due. So yeah, I'm sure, they'll find someone somehow.
You will.
Well, what I'm thinking is, sorry. What I'm thinking is like, it might even be a good idea to have someone from Spectrum Health or, a rehab center come and do a presentation on what is current, what are they seeing? because, I mean, they're dealing with it. That's just an option.
Yeah.
You know. I don't know, people in the field, more or less. So something I'll work on. But I think it should just be, I think this is information that more than just seniors would appreciate. So we'll have to come up with something.
Well, and see, even seniors, you know, there's a lot of them that have grandkids or kids, et cetera, just
Right.
things, even if it's not pertinent to they themselves personally as, you know, their own person, like they have family, you know, extended families that everyone's in different situations. It might, you know, be good for them to hear like what the current world is like on those types of topics and like what to look out for, et cetera. Because I'm sure there are plenty of people around that have loved ones who are struggling with different types of addictions that could
Right.
benefit from it.
Yeah,
Dan?
agreed.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and maybe we can partner with Mary Ann and the Grafton Medical Reserve Corps to put together a program. You know, it'd take a few months to get it together, but towards summertime or something at the police station, or have some information session and have a speaker or two to try to educate us a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Or maybe a couple of sessions. So if you miss one, there's another one, or maybe different topics.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely think some kind of program, and you're right, maybe in the summer, so we can organize something.
Great.
Any other questions, board members, for either Micah or Amelia? From an Alliance update perspective?
This is Austin.
Oh, I
just
do have a vaccine comment. I assume you know, and if you don't know, the state had this incentive. If you get a vaccine at one of our scheduled clinics that you can find on VaxFinder, you would receive a $75 gift card. And that's any COVID vaccine. So it's still going on until the end of March.
Okay.
And the two main clinics we have that are very consistent, at least until that point, maybe even beyond that, maybe beyond the incentive, are the library, the Worcester Public Library, every Wednesday and now every Saturday. So if you need the information, I can send it to you. I think it's on the City of Worcester website, but it might be good to just put it out there. There is that incentive.
Agreed, doesn't hurt.
I mean, I can't tell you what the card is for, but I think it's a choice of, it's whatever the state gives them at the time. It's either Stop and Shop or Cumberland Farms
Okay.
or something of that nature.
Doesn't hurt to tell the public.
Yeah.
Austin, you had question, comment?
Oh yeah, I was just wondering about the Spectrum House. Do they have like a cafeteria there? Is that why they have their permit? And have they been inspected recently?
Yes, so they have, they were operating two separate kitchen, one in the boys building, one in the girls building. I think due to staffing, they actually shut the boys building down and it hasn't been open.
No.
But they do have a kitchen where they do quite a bit of food prep.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure when the last time I inspected, but I would imagine it was about 4 months ago.
Okay.
So they're due again for an inspection, so I can just kind of combine the two and
Yeah.
check in on them.
Right. And about the St. James, St. Philip, St. Mary's, and the Willard House, I know we're still waiting applications from them. The note says that they don't really serve any food. They kind of stopped due to COVID. Should we reach out to them to see if they've gotten back into having meetings and serving food, or should we just assume that they're still not?
I think it's definitely a good idea just to check in and see if they've started anything back up. So I'll bring that up with Nancy.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Times change, obviously, and
Yeah.
doesn't hurt, you know. it's not like the same as like a seasonal, like a Bradish's or something where it's like everyone kind of knows after all these years, like when the season's getting closer, X, Y, and Z seasonal restaurants reach out, to get their permits and stuff versus doing them in December when they're not going to open for like 5 months. But yeah, no, the churches and Willard House, those are different. They're not what I would call a seasonal kind of business. So. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then we can jump to COVID cases, vaccines, mitigation efforts. As of January 6th, which is the last weekly report that we had, we've been informed of a total of 4,061 confirmed positive COVID-19 cases since the case tracking started back in early 2020. There were, I think, 32, if I remember correctly, this past weekly report versus, don't quote me on this one, it might have been 8 the prior week or 12 or something like that, definitely smaller, which, after now this being our 3rd time kind of going through this with holidays and everything, can't exactly say fully, surprised by any stretch to see a higher case count come through post holidays, given gatherings, parties, et cetera, with family. So can't say I was exactly surprised to see a higher case count come through following the holidays. And as we all know, obviously, that there's a very high likelihood that the case count is actually much higher, considering that a lot of people test at home and don't report it anywhere. As we've seen that. So that 32 is definitely, I'm sure, higher. At the same time, there's still flu that's definitely at a high level. The RSV concerns are still out there. Although I think, and obviously Amelia, correct me if I'm wrong on this, last I heard, it sounds like RSV is at least calming down a little bit compared to what it was. But that could have changed. I haven't heard anything post holidays, so I don't know if that's kind of ramped back up again because of holiday gatherings and everything. But I know there's a lot of stuff going around still, regardless, that definitely, continuing with the recommendations for folks to take precautions, wearing masks indoors, especially in crowded indoor places, or if you or a loved one is immunocompromised, elderly, have other health conditions that put you at high risk. The vaccines are still out there, along with all the boosters. The information sites continue to be, both the CDC has their website, and also then mass.gov has their website with the different types of vaccines, the boosters, locators, et cetera. So if someone had gotten the J&J before and now it's time, say, for a booster, they can go on there to figure out like what boosters are eligible, the timing that they're eligible, et cetera. And then the only other one that I know is not going around as much necessarily from a respiratory virus, but I have heard also upticks in group A strep that have seemed to be, it started off, you first heard about it in the UK, and now you're hearing about it in the US in terms of what appears to be some more severe cases that kids are getting in some places with the group A strep compared to just your basic strep throat. So just another disease to add to the list of concerns for precautions. I don't know if Amelia or Bill, if you've heard anything more around like the group A strep besides that.
We've had one case.
Okay.
I had one case this year, but it was not a Grafton case. But yeah, and I think over the last 2 months, I had a case as well. So just a few, but yes, more than before. Like maybe we would have one a year, but now it's like, okay, it's one every other month, so yeah, everything's changing. The flu, we wouldn't even have the capacity to follow up and contact trace for flu. I swipe away like 100 cases a day easily between the Alliance towns and Worcester. because there's just really nothing we can do about it. And in terms of the COVID cases, we still maintain two and a half. I mean, you could say 2, you could say 3 contact tracers. And they basically, I have them do the very young and the very old. The in-between, we wouldn't have the capacity. There's too many cases, but I have them cherry pick the ones that look the most urgent, and they do contact trace them. And to this day, people appreciate the phone calls. So, which is quite interesting. But yes, the RSV, we've seen that. We don't hear so much about it as we did a month ago. It's mainly flu and COVID, and people are trying to figure out, is the bivalent working? Is it better? Is it doing anything? Is it adding to anything? And I mean, it seems like they're finding that maybe it won't prevent it completely, but if you do have COVID, you're less likely to end up in a hospital with all that immunity on board. I mean, it seems like that's what's happening, at least. And of course, like you say, vaccine is everywhere. We offer every type. And now I'm about to order the bivalent vaccine for the very young, under 6 years old. So that's out as well. And that will start showing up in our clinics probably either this week or next week.
Right.
So every age group vaccine is now available.
Dan, did
But
you have?
there's a
your hand?
lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
We
have
also had the viral hemorrhagic fever surveillance cases.
yeah.
Again, not Grafton, at least the recent ones. So, but those just require surveillance for a couple of weeks. But luckily, nothing's turned into Ebola. It's kind of like an Ebola watch,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah, and then we've got the
So-
latest COVID variant. What is it? XBB.1.5,
Yeah,
I think. Unless
yeah.
there's another one that I haven't heard of yet, which there could be. But that one, it sounds
Yeah.
like they're talking that one, not saying, I mean, this was just one article, but they're pretty much like, if you haven't had it, you're going to get it because of this one. Sounds like it's like super contagious. May not be like put you in the hospital bad for some people, but
Right.
it sounds like it's highly contagious compared to some of the other versions of it.
Yeah, and we have staff that are super careful, and they go out once on a weekend and I get a phone call. I just tested positive. I didn't do anything. I just went to one place, it's like, it's that fast and that easy. So, yeah, it's pretty scary. If you haven't gotten it, watch your back.
Oh, I think it, Bill.
Yeah. I mean, I do think we fortunately have a relatively high rate of immunization in our
Yeah.
community and in nearby communities. And I do think that there's a fairly high rate also of native immunity at this point, the people who have been exposed, whether they were symptomatic or not, who have developed their own antibodies. It will be interesting to see what happens in China, because they're not immunized and they've been, basically isolated. So I fear that it's going to be a really large pandemic there.
Yeah.
And, I think it's become more something that we're probably going to have to deal with on an ongoing basis. But now we've been at it long enough that most people have either acquired immunity or had a mild case of COVID.
Yeah,
You know,
the bad part with the XBB.1.5 is they're saying even if you have the vaccine and you've had or you've had COVID recently, it can reinfect you. It doesn't
Right.
mean it's going to put you in the hospital necessarily, but it
Yeah, because
seems
you
to
have
be.
some level of immunity, so I don't know. It's been a fairly unusual experience. So.
Yeah. Dan?
Well, I mean, especially if they're thinking about making the COVID vaccine a once a year routine vaccine like the flu,
Mm.
you know, how do you capture all these variants once a year? You know, that's,
And
they're
you'll
going to
deal-
have to figure out
Yeah.
maybe twice a year. I don't know.
And you'll deal with the same thing we deal with influenza vaccine
Mhm.
every year. Sometimes it's relatively, spot on, and other times it's not as close as we'd like.
Yeah. It's far from spot on sometimes.
Yeah.
Dan?
But no, thank you. And I was just scratching my eye. It's,
No.
it's
I couldn't tell. I'm like, oh, it looks like Dan has his hand up.
kind of like an auction when you actually buy something, so I'm all set.
No, you bought something, Dan. I mean, anything else regarding COVID and then flu, RSV, surveillance for viral hemorrhagic, group A strep?
I
Any other-
think one question is that it sounds like people are beginning to move towards requiring masks in schools, or at least some of the statewide organizations are beginning to maybe not be mandatory, but recommending it and so forth. Hopefully now that we're, a couple of weeks past Christmas, we should at least have some sense of what sort of uptick we're going to get. And if it's not too dramatic, then it's probably a moot point. But I do think that there's at least some scenarios that would suggest we should at least begin to recommend masking more than we have, at least in the recent past.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like what this week's data.
Yeah.
Does that 32 get worse, stay the same, come back down? Knowing obviously, like we said at the beginning of the topic, like obviously there's plenty more cases, but if you use that data point that we have as
Right.
the data available, what do we see come this next Friday report?
Right.
Agreed.
And you might be able to use things like absenteeism from schools or things of that sort as a surrogate for what the prevalence is.
And what we do is we do a Maven report on Fridays and send to Jackie Davis the report for any student between the ages of 3 and 18. And there really haven't been that much for Grafton. But again, are they staying home and not testing because maybe they think they have something else? Or are they testing at home and staying home? And those results don't get reported. And with Maven, we can only report what's real, what's in the system. And we know full well that for every one that's reported, 5 are not, At least that's how it is in the other towns. But yeah, and we were on the college call today. They're kind of doing their thing and no one is mandating masks. They're all recommended. But at this point, they're not insisting on it. Which I would think in a college setting, you may want to, at least for these winter months, but it was not even, they didn't even give it a thought. So it's interesting times ahead.
All right.
Hopefully, most of the interesting times are behind us.
Yeah.
not ahead of us.
Great. All right, last topic we have is April, May, and June meeting dates. All right, so I'll ramble them off while we're at it. February 6th is our next meeting, and then March 6th. So if we go from March 6th, 1, 2, 3, we've got April 3rd, which is the first day.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think we should shoot for that first Monday of each month. But I know you're gonna go through them, but my only conflict is in June. I'm available the first Monday. The second Monday, I think I'm getting shipped off someplace for my 70th birthday, so I'm probably not gonna be able to make the 12th. Okay, that was my only, go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, I'm fine. No, you can't get shipped off for your 70th birthday. Sorry, we're gonna, veto that on you because we're gonna have a board meeting. No.
Well, hopefully no place in Grafton.
Yeah, hopefully further away for shipping off, not just like another part of town.
I'm not sure where, but I think it's gotta be off the grid someplace, so that's, anyway. But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
We could do April 3rd, which is the first Monday in April, and that would be a month after the March meeting. Then May 1st would be a month after the April meeting. And then we do 5 weeks because otherwise we'd have 2 in May and we wouldn't want to do the 29th because that's Memorial Day. So we couldn't do the 29th anyways, even if we wanted to. So then June 5th. Dan?
That's perfect with me, but I don't know how everybody else is.
Yeah, those all work for me too.
I mean, as of now, if I've got work travel, usually it's not the beginning of the month. So that unless it's something that comes up that's not as planned, but any planned travel like to the office is usually mid to late in the month. So the earlier part of the month is actually better usually for me. All right. And then obviously if something comes up and we find out like 2-3 people for some reason, something comes up, obviously we're usually pretty flexible. We can find another time. All right. Besides that, there was nothing else. We already talked about like the food permits and everything. Cause I was going to bring that up as part of old business, but we already talked about that. Dan?
Sorry. I've got 2 items I wanted to mention under discussion or whatever, where we're at here. Old business, new business.
New old business, yeah.
I attended the FEP meeting on Thursday as Grafton's, the Board of Health's backup. And there were like 39 folks on the call. There were actually 70 communities in the region or whatever. They're trying to get more participation. But the only thing I wanted to bring from that is just the fact that one focus that they have now is that they're going to try to get all of the emergency trailers sort of consistently stocked with fresh stuff. And I think that's something we'd probably have to partner with, again, the Grafton, Greater Grafton Reserve Corps or CERT, when that comes down the pike in a few months. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was that I'm going to try to get a meeting together in February with the young lady, the veterinary student, and her professor, because we're shooting for April 1st for a rabies clinic, which is a Saturday. So I'll partner with Nancy and these ladies and see if we can see what they need, see what we need. So maybe at the next meeting, I'll have some information about that for you. That's all.
Appreciate the updates. All right. Anything, there was no mail or correspondence. I already mentioned the upcoming meetings are February 6th and March 6th. So that's all we had on the agenda for tonight. So is there a motion to close, Dan?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting and hope all of you college football fans have a nice evening. The national championship.
Is there a second?
This is Austin Magnet. I will second the motion to end the meeting.
All right, and roll call vote.
Dan Finn, aye.
Austin Magnet, aye.
Bill Muller, aye.
Karen Gwiazdowski, Govan, aye. Thank
Go.
you, everyone, and Happy New Year again.